Alright, y'all, I decided I'm going to go ahead and do this clutch slave cylinder and the clutch master cylinder while I'm down here working on the exhaust, because you can see once I run this exhaust down through here, it's going to be really hard to connect or to remove that slave cylinder without messing around with the exhaust. So it's one of those jobs where, since you have the car already torn apart to this point, you just might as well go ahead and disconnect the slave cylinder. So that's what we're going to start working on now. Got 2 bolts on there. The shop manual said take those 2 bolts off there, and then when it comes out, there's a 14mm hose on the top of it that you're supposed to disconnect once you get it off the bell housing. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that, inshallah, and then I'll be right back to tell you how it went. Alright, y'all, before I started with the slave cylinder, I wanted to make sure I could get the master cylinder undone first. This is the carpeted thing cover right up under the steering wheel. So I wanted to show y'all which bolts I had to take out, screws I had to take out to get to it, or to get it off. So it's easier to show you from the inside. It's one here, one there, one here, one here, and one here. And there are 2 on the side right there. Okay, so altogether there's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then there's a light for your foot that plugs in right here. There are no disconnects. It's just you pull it to the side. You pull it to the side as hard as you can, and then to the other side, and it wiggles off. And then there's a screw right here that holds the computer plug-in, whatever that OBD&I, whatever it is. It's one screw that holds it on, and then it comes out. So I'm going to show you up under the dash. And the reason you have to take this panel off is because you have to get the pin off the clutch. Anyway, there's that one screw. I say there's one screw holding the computer on, or the plug-in port for the computer. That one screw is right there. Okay, and then this is the plug-in for the this is the plug-in for the light. And again, there's nothing that you squeeze to pull it apart. You just have to pull it. You just have to pull it out to the side and then to the other side to wiggle it out. Okay, and then you can get to where you need to get. We need to get to the top of that clutch pedal. So lift your steering wheel up all the way, and I'm going to try to position myself up under there so you can see. Y'all, I can't reach up in there with my other hand and point out, but what you have to do, you have to follow. Here's the clutch pedal right here. Okay, here's my clutch pedal. You have to follow the clutch pedal bracket on up to where it goes to its pivot point up there. And when you get there, there's a pin that holds the shaft. It's just a pin, not a pin, a clip that holds the shaft on there. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the clip off, and then when I pull the clip off, you'll be able to see what it looks like. But you slip the clip off, and then you can pull the master cylinder coupling apart from the pedal. So the pedal's going to stay here. All we're going to do is slip the clip off, and then I'll have to show you when I have it apart. I'm lying on my back up under the steering wheel facing up. So it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I have the car jacked up, and so it's not as bad as it could be. All right, I'll pull it off, inshallah. I'll show you in a little bit. Okay, y'all, I got these 2 nuts loose. And I guess the pressure from the system is already pushing it out of the transmission housing, the bell housing. But at any rate, it's just those 2 nuts. The directions said take the nuts off first, and then take the hydraulic fitting off. So I bought some flare nut wrenches for that, so I wouldn't round it out. It's a good set of tools to have. Good flare nut tube set. Flare nut tube wrench. All right. I'll go ahead and pull those 2 off and let you see what it looks like afterwards. Alright, I got it hanging down. There is a little C-clip at the end of this rod, the ram, so make sure you save that. I bet it's important. My new one didn't come with that C-clip, but I'm going to transfer it, inshallah. It's really hard taking off this 14mm flare nut. So I got to go get another wrench to use as some leverage on my flare nut tube wrench, so I can get that loose and pull that one off, put the new one on. Y'all, I had to give up on that slave cylinder for a little while, letting it relax under there with some, I sprayed it with some PPB blaster, so it's sitting because I couldn't get that flare nut to bulge. I got this one broken loose because I left it mounted to the firewall, so that one's loose right now, but I got to move the computer out of the way to move that big wire out, the big wiring harness out of the way. So I'm gonna move that computer, inshallah, and start disconnecting this thing. Since I already got the flare nut loose, it's gonna be just disconnected from the wall, let it all leak everywhere, and start trying to put on that other. If you're curious how I'm getting to these bolts on the firewall, I'm using this long extension. My inner fender is out because I was doing spark plugs and headers and everything else. But so my inner fender is out, and I have an elbow on there, and this one's at a 12-inch extension. Alright, so that gets the one closest to the brake booster. The other one looks to be easier to get at. Now I don't know how I'm going to put it back on, but this is how I'm taking it off. Alright y'all, this is what it looks like. This big gray spacer here goes between the flange of this clutch master cylinder and the firewall. You have to reuse that. And that length right there is where your clutch pedal is right now. So hopefully the other one will be at that same length. I'm not going to be pushing it because then I get air in it. I'm going to fill it up, the new one, inshallah, fill it up, and then hopefully that ram is already there. Otherwise, then I will pull it. But just anytime you're pulling it without fluid, it's going to be pulling in air. But you have to bleed the system anyway. Alright, so I'm going to get a pry bar or something sticking between this old flange and the new one. I had to pull it off the wall. It was stuck to the wall. Jeez, I hope I don't have to clean that. I don't know how to clean that. And I had to just force it down underneath this brace to pull it off. Alright y'all, here's the old one and the new one. This old one had the spacer on it, so I took that spacer off. Gonna put the spacer on this one and go ahead and fill it up. The directions I think said something. I think I'm supposed to fill it up first. That makes sense. It's a seal system. I don't think it matters actually, except if I move that ram while I'm installing it. But it looks like the ram is in the exact same length as that one. Yeah, I'm gonna fill it up when I put it on. At any rate, that's what it looks like. Now I got to figure out how to move it. And this ram here, it moves from side to side, I believe, for installation, ease of installation. So that helps. Alright, so let me go ahead and try to finagle this thing back onto the wall, firewall. Okay, y'all, this thing kicked my butt. Whoo! Okay, let me give you some tips and tricks. Once you pull that other one off, the other one comes off. This is evident, self-evident. I showed you with that elbow I had. But putting this thing back on, when you put it on, make sure when that ram from the master cylinder goes through the firewall that it is on the side of the it comes into the firewall on the side of the clutch pedal that has the pin sticking out to the male end of the clutch pedal to accept it. You stuck a female end ram from the master cylinder through the firewall, and you just got to make sure that it's on the right side. So before you bolt anything up, go inside, make sure it's on the correct side of that clutch pedal, because mine went in on the wrong side after I'd already bolted it up, and I had a bath trying to get it back onto the other side. So that's one thing. Number two, dadgum, you can see I cross-threaded that thing, and that's as tight as I can get it. So I ain't backing it back out. It's just how it's going to have to be. It's not a gasket surface, but you know, that other one's in there good, so we're gonna call it good enough. That was the one. Let me see. All right, so just lining those holes up, and then getting this that 14 millimeter tube. Whatever that flare nut. Getting that flare nut back in there, lined up with the. Make sure you put that in this that hydraulic fitting before you mount the thing, because it was easier for me to line up the threads to get it in going straight with that master cylinder hanging off the wall. I could move it around. It was just easier. So I want to say that. So I think that's it. Oh, and then the ram from this master cylinder, the thing has a clip that comes off. I didn't show y'all this clip yet. I'm putting mine together without the clip being installed because, dadgummit, where is the clip? Here it is. I'm going to put it together. Let me see, that's the clip right there. I'm going to put it together without that clip back on the end of the clutch pedal, just because I think that the new one has, the way that the female end is, it has a clip on it already built into it. And I couldn't figure for the life of me how to get that thing back on to the clutch pedal. So this is the stock one. This is what keeps the clutch pedal connected to the ram, to the old master cylinder ram. And so once I pull this off, then I could pop the female end off the male end of the clutch pedal for the old one. So this clip right here is what's holding your old one on. Okay, so just remember that. This is what I pulled off at first. But the new one, I think it snaps on, so I don't need that. I'm going to keep it in a Ziploc bag in the armrest just in case I'm riding down the road and the thing comes off, but I don't believe it will. Alright, that's it. I think I'm going to go ahead and go back to this stuff I sprayed down with the PB blaster earlier. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and reconnect that under dash cover, and inshallah after that I'll do the slave cylinder. So I showed y'all the bolt holes on that already. You just put them back like you found it. Alright, I just wanted y'all to see this as I'm putting this panel back on underneath the steering wheel. First thing I had to do was plug back in the light, and that again, you just push the connector back onto the light. I don't know if I heard a snap, but I think I put my thumb on the back of it here and squeezed use this to brace it, and then my fingers to pinch it on. After I did that, I got that screw and put that screw in to remount the thing you plug the computer in to read your codes. So now that's connected under there. Now I'm gonna start putting in. Right now, I put in this screw here just to hold it up. Slide it back under there. Put that screw in, that bolt in, and then do the rest. Alright y'all, I'm still trying to disconnect this hose from the slave cylinder. I'm having to use this long wrench here, this 13/16 on the end of my 14 millimeter flare nut wrench to get the leverage I need to loosen this thing. It's that tight. And what I did, I had to get a cinder block, put the vice grips on the cinder block so that when I try to torque that nut loose, let me see if I can focus on it. When I try to torque that nut loose, it tries to spin the whole thing because it's not bolted to anything. So I had to put the vice grips on it, and then put the vice grips on at an angle onto this cinder block, so that when I torque that nut loose and the thing tries to spin, it hits the block and stops. And I have to use that lever arm, and oh man, this is some work. I mean, whoever put this thing on, if maybe they use Loctite or something, they ought to be set afire. Anyhow, that's being extra, but that's what I'm still working on, slowly but surely. Alright y'all, I'm going to put this new slave cylinder on, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a snap ring, a little snap ring that comes off the old one that you need to put on this one. Okay, so off of this the old ram. This is the old ram. I took the snap ring off. It's so tiny, so do it someplace where if it flies across the room, you'll be able to find it. Take that snap ring off of there and put it on the new one, and then the new one slides into that hole, and it's just a wobbly type of thing. Alright, and then you're supposed to fill it up. It has directions when you buy it. I bought the Dorman ones, so you can follow the directions. I didn't find them to be too helpful, but you put fluid in here, you fill it up with fluid, and then as soon as you tilt it to the side, and once as you're filling it with fluid and it's tilted, then the air should be coming out the top since it's tilted, and then as soon as you can, once it starts to overflow, you're supposed to connect the hydraulic line, the brake line, and that's supposed to get some fluid in that cylinder before you start pumping. Alright, all. I got it installed. I had to push it in. You'll notice when you take the bolts off when you're removing it that, let me try to make sure that you're not sitting upside down. When you take those nuts off, that thing pushes itself out of the clutch, pushes itself, whatever. The slave cylinder pushes itself out from the bell housing. So when you put it back together, you have to push it in there. And it takes some force, so I had to push with all my might, get it in there, and then put the nuts on. I put one nut on to hold it, and then put the other nut on, and then tightened it alternately until it went all the way on. Made sure I tightened that. Oh, and what I did, I tried to fill it up, like it said, at 45, hold it at an angle and try to fill up the slave cylinder with fluid first. I couldn't get any to go in, and then I was like, duh, you got to loosen the bleed screw there. So when you have it off, right out the box, loosen the bleed screw and then start filling it up through the where the hose goes. And when you fill it up, once it gets full, it's going to start leaking out the bleeder. And when it starts leaking out the bleeder, then you stop pouring fluid in and you tighten the bleeder back up. Now your slave cylinder is full. Bring it over here and connect your brake line to it before any leaks out. And so then that fills it up, no air in there. But my line is basically full of air because it was empty. I had both master cylinder off and this cylinder off. I filled up the master cylinder and went in the car to start pumping it, and it just goes to the floor like nothing. I'm like, dang. But I think I got the same issue. I'm gonna have to open up that bleeder while somebody's pushing it. Since I'm in the garage by myself, I'm gonna have to ask my 8-year-old, but he might start pumping like when I tell him to, just happy to pump like any man eventually. I reckon it's in our DNA. But he'll start pumping it, but he might stop. He might say, oh, okay, and let off while I'm in the middle of a bleed. So I need somebody with a little bit more patience and understand you cannot let off that pedal till I tell you to. So anyhow, I got to wait for somebody else to come help me and pump the thing while I'm sitting under here to loosen that bleeder each time. And hopefully then I'll have some pedal and I'll have some good news to report. All right, y'all, that's I think you'll know this, but that's the bleed screw. So once I'm glad I filled that thing up so that I knew fluid was in the system. I already went through how to fill it up before you mount it. But then once you get it mounted, you're going to need a partner to sit in the car and pump it. And you keep, let me see, where is it? You keep the cap off. You keep the cap off while you're bleeding the system, And what I did, and once I had all this thing connected, dude, it says pump it 20 times till you get a hard pedal. I pumped it 20 times, pumped it 50 times, pumped it 60 times, nothing. Finally, I just used my arm and I just kept pumping and pumping and pumping. I told my son to get out the way because I was having fluid come out and it was running through, but the pedal wasn't getting stiffer. So I had my son get out and I just used my hand. I sat beside the car and used my hand and just pumped and pumped and pumped as fast as I could go until I can get it, until I felt it starting getting a little tougher. And when I couldn't get it with my arm anymore, then I used my leg and then kept pumping and pumping and pumping, rapid fire. And then it finally pumped up. And then I told my son, hold it. And that time when I got under there, told him, hold that pedal down, don't let up, hold it down to bleed it. While he was holding it down, I turned that bleeder and loosened it up. And that stuff just went, psh, just fizz, full of air. And so anyhow, I closed it back up, told him to let off. And then we just repeated that process over and over again. He pumped a couple of times, then held it. I loosened the bleeder, let the fizz come out, and closed the bleeder back, and then let him let up from the pedal. And then we went to just, him pressing and holding. One time, press the pedal, hold it, and then I bled it, and then let him back up. Then hold the push again, hold it. I bled it again, let the bleeder, loosen the bleeder, and just repeated that until it just got no more fizz coming out, no more bubbles. And then I got up to the top, and whenever he was pumped, I told him to push it down one time, let me see if any bubbles come up through the fluid. No bubbles came up through the fluid, so then I filled it up to the tip top again and went through the same process until the level came down to where I wanted it for full. All right, so everybody, that's the slave cylinder and master cylinder clutch install. Be careful again, and remember what I told you about when you finally put that master cylinder in, make sure the ram is on the correct side of the clutch pedal. Okay. Also, look at the ram at the end of it to see if you even need that clip that you pulled off earlier that was connected to the clutch. I really think that when I pushed that new ram on, it clipped on to the end of the clutch pedal, and I don't need a new to reuse the old clip. You all need to make sure that. Be careful when you're running those bolts back down. You remember I cross-threaded mine over there. You can't see it, but I cross-threaded mine over there. This one's in good, but you don't need to make the same mistake. What else? Yeah, that's it. All right, I'm going to put the computer back over top of it and bolt it back down, and that should be that. Y'all see this thing is all pulled apart. I'm waiting on my headers. Well, the headers came and they don't fit again. Dadgum. But anyway, that's what this whole video has been about, was I just wanted to put headers on. Guys, I'd be remiss if I did not specify that for these flare nut wrenches, you better not go cheap on them. I bought the Craftsman, and the only reason I spent the money on this and not the Harbor Freightway is because with the Craftsman tools, these flare nuts, I bought some cheap Harbor Freight O2 sensors. Where are them things at? Here we go. I think these are. I bought some cheap O2 sensors before, and it's kind of the same concept. I put this dang thing on the O2 sensor, turned it, and the whole thing just flexed open and wrapped right on, or just stripped the O2 sensor. Didn't do a dadgum thing because it's so dang skinny. It's cheap. The Craftsman stuff, if you look at it, at the wrench itself, is really thick. If they make them skinnier, as soon as you put on that thing and turn it, it's going to flex open and round out that flare nut. So you want to buy Craftsman for something like this. And then if anything ever breaks or it wasn't right, lifetime warranty, you carry it back to any Sears. Hopefully Sears will still be around. Well, whoever buys Craftsman when Sears goes bankrupt. But Craftsman all the way for these flare nut jobs. Anytime you're working with the brakes, brake hoses, any kind of hydraulic lines, you really need that. I got the crow's feet too, just because whenever you're working on another flare nut, you put that down, it's down deep somewhere, you put it down on there, you stick the extension in here, and then you can still turn it. Alright, and that's what the crow's foot flare nut wrench is for. And again, I went Craftsman, you get it good and thick. Otherwise, you buy some cheap mess, and as soon as you go to turn it, it's going to flex and round out your nut. So just another helpful hint. One more thing, y'all. He ain't paying me for this, but Merritt Corvette, MerrittCorvette.com, I swear they have the best prices on any used parts you want. And I reckon he has some kind of salvage yard, but he'll pick apart them cars and give you whatever you need. He has an interchange chart to tell you what goes on what year and what you can interchange. So again, anything you need that's used, Merritt Corvette. You know, I needed a bunch of stuff. I had to get I bought from him the new heater core. I think you can see it in there. I needed a new evaporator, and so he just sent me the whole assembly. And so I'm gonna slap that assembly on here, inshallah, when I get my headers. And I gotta buy new inner fenders from him, because those inner fenders I have are just crap. I bought new Dorman slave cylinder, master cylinder. You don't buy that used. But anything else you need used for the Corvette, parts and pieces and such, MerrittCorvette.com. He's going to be the best one to go to. Plus, he can answer all your questions too via email.